Okay, good afternoon everybody. Thank you very much for coming along virtually and attending this presentation webinar with myself, Stuart Little, and Andy Deacon from the Energy Saving Trust. The point of today's webinar is to introduce Eco and Green Deal to those of you who have never heard of it, and just let you know how it's progressing, how it's going, but most importantly how you can help access it and actually get some investment into your properties or your business quickly and easily, and help you unlock, because it is quite a complicated thing. It is fairly new and there are a variety of opinions out there. So without further ado, we shall press on with the webinar. We can provide CPD certificates at the end. If you send us an email and request one, we can actually send you one and say, yep, you definitely did attend. We need to know that you actually attended though, so we can make sure you are honourable and above board and you have actually attended. If this is weird for you, if you're sitting in a room on your own, you have my sympathy, because I'm sat in my boardroom in Dundee on my own, and Andy is sat somewhere with a pair of headphones on at his end as well. So right now I'm sitting in Dundee, it is pouring with rain, and I'm sitting talking to myself. So it's a very strange experience, and I do appreciate some of you might be in one-man businesses, and some of you might be in a big business with 20 of you sitting around a screen. But if you do need presentation, if you need certificates for those other 20 people, please send all the details and we will get that for you. Okay, IRT element. For those of you who've never heard of our company before, IRT Surveys has been around for almost 12 years. And back in 2006, we raised a bit of venture capital because we wanted to see if it was possible to turn pictures of energy into quantified pictures of energy. So we spent about 2 years and about £1.2 million turning pixels into pounds, and then entering the patent process and actually saying, look, do you know what, we can now do this. We can evaluate your stock and show you where the problems are visually and numerically. So the ethos behind what we do is that the more you see, the more you learn, the more you can save, and the faster you can save. That is typically what a quantified image looks like. What you're looking at on the right-hand side is a house with no insulation and single glazing, whereas the house on the left has been fully cavity filled and double glazed. The bit that's unique to IRT is the colour palette that it's in, because it only leaves energy loss in white, yellow and red, white being the worst, then yellow, then red. But the quantified strip at the bottom saying you are wasting 347 pounds, your house is contributing 3.6 tonnes of carbon to the environment, and you're wasting 18,000 kilowatts. We then embed each image with what we call a carbon hot foot. The more red pixels in that footprint, the worse the insulation problem. The pixels are dynamically linked to the image itself, so that footprint is bang in the middle. It's 1/3 red, 1/3 yellow, 1/3 green, because you're looking at a perfect house and an awful house. Those images we actually did with British Gas in Manchester, and the reason we embarked on the whole could we quantify images, actually you can trace back to Aberdeen City Council when we did 25,000 houses for them in 3 phases. Now, pre the ability to quantify them, what we did was 10,000 houses in full colour infrared, full colour of the rainbow, and Aberdeen then knocked on the doors and said to 10,000 people, we would like to give you free insulation, free double glazing, free this, free that. And the tenants looked at the images and said, I don't understand it. You're not drilling holes in my house, you're not taking out my windows, go away. I don't care if it's free. Which is an unbelievable thing to say to someone, but that is reality. The following year we did another 10,000, and we did them in black and white with energy loss in bright red. The tenants, when they knocked on the doors, they all understood the image and said, oh, right, I understand that red's bad, so what? You're not drilling a hole in my house. It wasn't until year 3, when we went back and did the final 5,000, when we said, you are wasting £347. Do you know, currently, that's 450 cans of Tennent's Lager at Asda. That was the thing that made people go, oh, come in, help. Now, I'm not saying anything about Scottish culture, and Aberdonians in particular, but when you can monetize something and put it into pounds, shillings and pence and equate it to a week's holiday or beer or pizza or whatever it is, when you can monetize it, you get people's attention, and that can only be a good thing. Now, our clients look like this confused Gok Wan character here. He is actually the most confused man. If you Google confused man images, he comes up number 1, 2, or 3. So he's very confused. What we find our clients saying, look, I know I've got legislation. I've heard of things like CRC. I've heard of the Green Deal. I've heard that there is funding available, but I don't know where I am, and I don't know what problems I have. And their head often is in the sand a little bit, not because they're technically improficient. It's more just a fear of change. They like doing things the normal way they've always done things. But they are all aware of their green image, their reputation in the marketplace, be they a housing association or university. They want to be seen to be green. Soaring energy costs, again, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, another 9–10% went on energy bills for all us domestic people as well. So we need to do something. And the legislation that's in place, it's not perfect, but it's what we have, and we need to access it. We need to make it work for us. The Green Deal, you and I can access, and ECO, I guess it's more aimed at your housing associations and local authorities who can put together a nice big project. I'm not going to tell you too much about it because Andy's going to go over a lot of that in his presentation. The Green Deal to date, there are 85,000 assessments being done, which is a fair number being done. But actually, only 57 Green Deals have taken place in the country. A country of 27 million homes, 57's not exactly setting the heather on fire. And it's been quite an expensive journey to get this far. A little pie chart there, the actual projects completed in the kind of yellow-orange colour is so small you can't see it in the number of assessments. So it's been a bit expensive to get this far, but it is starting to gain momentum, because even 2 weeks ago, that actually completed number was 12. So it is actually starting to get a little bit of traction. It's quite a slow survey process. Interest rate, it would be great if it was interest free, but it's not. It's about 7.9%. The golden rule, if you're not familiar with it, basically any measures you implement, the interest, the loan can only be as long as the repayment return on investment. So if you borrow £10,000 over 10 years, you have to make £10,000 worth of savings in 10 years. And that doesn't include the interest rate, which makes it much, much harder to hit the golden rule. Homeowner engagement, I still come across people on a regular basis and ask them, have you heard of the Green Deal? And an awful lot of them haven't. So there's a little bit of just ignorance in the general marketplace. People don't really understand what it is. And again, what we find is the condition that people expect their property to be in. Again, if I use Aberdeen as a good case study, Aberdeen said, here is our SAP ratings. This is what we've done. We insulated in the 80s. We double glazed in the 90s. There's the SAP score on paper. When we did the surveys, we actually found a third of the houses had all the insulation when they took the double glazing, sorry, when they took the single glazing out, a lot of the insulation fell out, the double glazing was put in, and the insulation was just swept up and taken away. So making an assumptive decision based on that information, it's just wrong. You will not make the kind of savings you expect to make if you don't benchmark where you are. Moving on to eco, it's a little bit of a healthier story than the Green Deal at the moment. There's quite a few measures, all 250,000 measures installed, a lot of lofts, a lot of cavities, a lot of boilers, not a huge amount of solid wall insulation. Again, this webinar is being recorded, folks. If you want to see it again, it will be uploaded to our website on Monday or Tuesday, and you can download it and go through all the facts and figures. All the figures here are taken straight from DEC's statistical release, which came out on the 17th of October. so it's hot off the press. A lot of these the cavity jobs have been claimed as hard to treat. The hard to treat criteria means the cavity is less than 50 millimeters. And rather famously, Ofgem rejected about 31,000 49mm cavities very recently. Why were they all 49 when truly they probably weren't? It's because the carbon value is much, much higher for a hard-to-treat home than it is for a normal virgin cavity. It's worth roughly £100 more per tonne of carbon. So there's a little bit of temptation there to say, yep, it's definitely hard to treat, it's 49 millimeters. But if you have to check it and drill a hole and actually prove it's 49 millimeters, you risk not getting paid for it at all. The issues with eco, again, it's low-hanging fruit. Everyone will do the easy stuff first. And the point of eco is to look at things more holistically and not do that. Eco is, to my mind, the whole point of eco is to say, look, let's look at our house and give it everything we can, irrespective of tenancy or house type. Let's look at these homes and say that one needs a boiler and insulation and double glazing and a ground source heat pump and solar panels. Let's give it everything. And whilst we're doing it, let's do next door, and let's do next door, and let's do next door, and basically build a community-wide scheme. And it's getting to grips with that that's been quite challenging for most of us. Our solution, again, is to say, look, let us photograph all the buildings, let us rank and rate your stock, let us work out how much funding you can get from this your stock. Let us come back and say things like, look, we think you can get £8,683 of funding under ECO. And at the end of it, what's quite unique at IRT is we can actually take the images again at the end of the project and prove that it's been done correctly. And then we can give you an assortment of tools that allow you to do desktop review yourself, which I will now show you. A very cheesy name. We produce a piece of software called the Carbon Diet Plan. What this allows you to do, this is online. This allows you to play with one house or 5,000 houses or 10,000 houses or all your bungalows or all your semi-detached or all your off-gas grid. And what you can do there is log in to the Carbon Dashboard website. It's completely free of charge. And you can then move sliders and say, what happens if I insulate all my walls? I take them from a 2.1 solid wall U value to 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.3 and click calculate. And what happens behind the scenes in our servers is we go away and we do thousands and thousands of SAP calculations for you, and we come back and say, you should save £201,256, 67% your CO2 and 69% of your energy. And the little speedometers swing round. To give you an example of how quickly it happens, if you have one house, it takes about 1 second to do it. If you're trying to do a complete hospital campus, for want of a better word, it might take 5-6 minutes to do that. One's using SAP, one's using SBEM at its core. You'll also notice on the dashboard website there is an EPC. If what you're doing has an impact on the EPC certificate, it will pump into the dashboard and say, if you do those walls, you will go from a G to a D, which will help you plan your retrofit programs and meet all your KPIs. We all hate KPIs, but they're a part of life these days. Now, give you an example of it in action. We did 2,500 homes. This is a small Scottish local authority. Resulted in 838 installs and about 1,800 tonnes of CO2 were identified. That was all done, fully funded, which was fantastic. This is back in CERT and CESP times, by the way, this particular example. However, we then went back at the end. We proved that the installs were done fantastically well, apart from 15 external wall insulation properties, which is what EWI stands for. Those EWIs had been flung on very, very quickly and were letting water in at the corners, and the insulation itself was starting to soak. So again, a really nice way to do a QA audit at the end, and a nice simple spreadsheet to engage the CFO in your organization. He can look at the numbers and think, yep, this makes sense. It's good, simple data to provide utility companies and say, there is how much carbon we should save. Can we access eco? And they may turn around and say, we can give you 80% funding for this, 100% funding for that, and 50% funding for the other, but no funding for this. And that allows you to identify a shortfall very, very quickly, which you can then come out of your own CapEx budget, or you can borrow under things like the Green Deal. These are some images from that project, very simple before and after. You can see the numbers at the bottom. You've got a nice big striking red foot. You can see the house is wasting £96.92 per annum. How much kilowatts it's wasting, 3,200 kilowatts and 623 kilograms of CO2. That's not the entire property wastage, that's just the red and yellow pixels, how much energy is physically coming out the front of that building. The after image shows a much, much healthier story. Just tiny little red big toe, nothing to worry about, £3.77, which predominantly you can see coming out of the heads of the windows, which could well be trickle vents. The solid wall at the bottom, the EWI install, you can see on the thermal image on the right hand side, all that red and yellow, that is what water looks like getting into a system. So again, it's brand new, it's just been done, and we've surveyed that maybe 2 or 3 months after completion. What does the deliverable look like? Again, all our software integrates with Excel, which will lead on nicely to what Andy's going to talk to you about as well. We basically need a database of everything you know about your housing stock. And Andy, I don't want to steal your thunder, but Andy can provide a hell of a lot of that information for you if you don't already have it. We add our thermal data, then we add in everything you can possibly do to that house in Excel. That allows you to then rank and rate and pick and choose what you want to do. Every home can have an individual performance report that says if you do this, you can achieve X. And again, every single report can have a breakdown that you can use to knock on the door and say, here's how much money you can save from your loft insulation, from draft proofing, and from light bulbs. Here is why you should take our help and really engage the public, because that has been a major stumbling block for Green Deal and Eco, I believe. All the images we take, we've got about 9 offices in the UK. Every image we take is geotagged, which means we can build it into Google Earth, which means in Google Earth, you can zoom in, you can pick a property, you can pull up an individual report, you can then play with the carbon dashboard, simulate it. And if it's something you're putting out to tender, you can use our information, put that out to tender and say, look, I need 100 ground source heat pumps, I need 500 solid wall jobs, I need 30,000 loft top-ups. Whatever it is, that data can be put out to tender, and you can let installers and utility companies have a look at your stuff online. So for instance, if you were dealing with, say, SIG or Carillion or the Mark Group, they could actually pull up your images and have a look at them and think, holy smoke, that's a really difficult one to insulate. We need scaffolding, we need this, we need that. Access is terrible, or that's fantastic. You could get them salivating and knocking on your door, begging to come and insulate them. That's the end of the infrared bit. You'll be glad to know we're going to change voice. Andy, I'm going to hand the controls over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Great.
And I shall stick my microphone on mute, and I'll be quiet for the next 15-20 minutes. Good luck, Andy. All the best.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone. And thanks to IRT for this opportunity to talk to you in particular about a data set and a product that we've got available. I'll give you the web links to find out more information and my email address at the end of this. But you'll see in a few moments some bits to our data that are complementary to some of what you've seen coming out of IRT, and then also some additional analysis that we can do to start to move beyond information about property characteristics to building in information about income, etc., for individual households, to start to build a more complete picture of potential eligibility for different of the parts of eco. And Stuart's already made the point that that scheme is up and running. So about 250,000, 250,000 measures installed under the scheme. But the point was made, the majority of those being loft and cavity wall insulation, which is great stuff, and a market building slowly but surely for more complex solid wall insulation jobs. There are a number of different strands to eco, and it's worth understanding and getting your head around the implications of the different parts of the scheme and the way in which they combine and which are appropriate for which types of work and which sorts of measures. There are three main bits to it, something called CERO, the carbon emissions reduction obligation, which is the top sort of slice of that slide that you see there, and that's primarily designed to provide funding for insulation and glazing measures in homes where solid wall insulation or hard to treat cavity wall insulation are required. So you need a combination of what are called primary measures, and if you install solid wall insulation or hard to treat cavity wall, then funding might also be available for the installation of secondary measures. It's the largest of the three components of eco, but it's equally the one that it's most difficult for the energy suppliers to deliver, and I'll come on and explain a little bit about why and some of the combinations of data and data fields that can be brought together to help unlock access to CERO. At the moment, some of you will know there's an element of eco that's being agreed through bilateral deals between energy suppliers and Green Deal providers and local authorities, RSLs and others in the supply chain. And an element of that that's being traded through this anonymous auction process called the eco brokerage. And for that, at the moment, CERO rates through the brokerage scheme trading at around about £100 per tonne of lifetime CO2 saving, and that's with these things called in-use factors applied to those calculations. The second part of eco is this thing called the carbon saving communities obligation, CISCO, and that is restricted to particular parts of the country. And what that does is to provide funding for measures in homes that fall into the bottom 15% income bracket on this thing called index of multiple deprivation. You'll have heard people, I'm sure, talking about IMD areas. It's a smaller overall chunk of eco than the CERO obligation, and funding rates through brokerage for CISCO trading at around £50 per tonne of lifetime CO2. There is a sub-element, and that's the third slice shown at the bottom of this slide, which is that suppliers are obliged to deliver 15% of that CISCO obligation in rural areas. So those of you out in rural areas, we're checking on eligibility for this particular component, and the sort of qualification criteria around that are slightly different to straight CISCO, but the value of homes in those areas through the eco brokerage typically around the same as CISCO overall, so trading at around £50 per tonne of lifetime CO2. There's then a third element, and I'll say, I guess, slightly less about that today, something called the Home Heating Cost Reduction Obligation, or HCRO for short, and that effectively is a bit like the successor to the old affordable warmth programs, but the calculations of the value of that through brokerage and so on calculated in a different way. So it provides a value of pence of eco per pound of energy bill saving over the lifetime of the measure that's installed, and that's the one also with certain kind of gateway benefits and eligibility criteria around income, etc., to qualify for, and is designed to support those who are less well off with adequately heating and insulating their properties. Stuart, what I don't have is a button to move to the next slide.
Then I shall try and do that this end. I was just answering some questions online.
Thank you.
There you go. You got that?
Yeah, great. So just to give you a feel, so this is average funding rates for eco-brokerage data from a period from May through to June of this year, just to give you an idea for the three different elements of the scheme, how the traded price through the brokerage is moving around. So typically zero, somewhere of the order of between 100 and 120 pounds per lifetime tonne of CO2 saved, and Cisco just less than half that, typically trading at around £50. And then you'll see the affordable warmth that's calculated in a slightly different way, and the unit price around, so it's 20 pence of eco per pound of energy bill saving over the lifetime of the installed measures. So it just gives you a feel. Then you could go away and start to work out and aggregate up, and some of both our IRT's tools and the energy saving trusts can help with those kinds of eco calculations. Next slide.
Does that work okay?
Yeah, good, thank you. So what we've done is to take various data sets and seek to combine them into one overall product that I'll show you some examples of in just a moment. So some of you will know for a number of years Energy Saving Trust has maintained on behalf of the energy suppliers and DEC something called HEED, the Home Energy Efficiency database. That now not being further updated, but it contains a historical record at something called census, lower super output area level, so about 120 houses typically in an LSOA, of installation of energy efficiency measures through CERT and its predecessors EEC, SOP and ESOP, and some information about some of the characteristics of the property in terms of age of construction, etc. We can then build on that with data from the English House Conditions Survey and others from the various devolved nations. We bring in some information from Experian about some of the demographic characteristics of the households, so some information about whether they are likely to be on benefits or not, some information about estimates of levels of household income and so on, in part using a data set called Mosaic that you may have heard of. We also bring in some data from Ordnance Survey mapping, so we can start to look at things like the orientation of the property, for example, for suitability, for things like PV installation and solar panels, and we can then bring in some other top-level statistical data from the census through ONS and DWP. And the next slide, please, Stuart, will then show you what that starts to look like with the combination of those different fields. So you'll see there on the left-hand side that set of installation and survey records brought in from the various obligation schemes. Then an addition of some data from the 2012 information to give a baseline set of data about the housing stock. We then combine that, add in from the right hand side a set of predictor variables about property age type, tenure, index of multiple deprivation, rural urban location and some geography, and effectively what we then derive is it's a modeled data set, but it's one that's been tested and ground truth to give us some information about the whole address base, so roughly 26 million households in the UK, and the ability to aggregate and disaggregate that right down to individual address level. So to be clear, it is a modelled data product, but one that we've done some testing on, and the results of that testing on our website. But if you want to engage, for example, one of the energy suppliers in an early conversation about eco and eco eligibility, what it will do is it enable you to enter that discussion with some information about your complete housing stock. So if you've got records about some but not all, then this is very good data to fill in the gaps. And of course, you can do some of your own testing to compare our information from this home analytics data set with some of your own. Next slide, please, Stuart.
If I could just add a little bit there as well, Andy.
Yeah, sure.
That's British people are fantastic at moaning about things. And me myself, I'm the, the world's biggest moan. But the data set that's out there that you have is a fantastic place to start and say, now I know where I think I am. Doing 26 million infrared surveys is quite expensive. But if you can start with the EST data set and then drill into it and say, these are the ones that I would like to do an infrared survey on, to truly find out exactly where I am, and then take that to eco, I think that's probably the fastest thing to actually unlock it. Otherwise, you're just going to sit and moan and say, "Oh, I can't get any eco money. No one's interested in giving me it." It's up to the stock owners, I think, to actually do it, to take responsibility and go and ask. And that might be cruel. I don't know if there are any comments. I might get hundreds of emails flying in at the end of it. But it's a bloody good place to start if you're going to plan a journey. Is find out where you are.
Yeah, very true, Stuart. And I would add that it is a competitive market. We've seen a number of local authorities and housing associations go out to tender for delivery of eco to effectively have suppliers and providers compete to deliver that work, but going to them and providing them with as accurate as information as possible about your stock can often help shortcut that and make that process much easier.
Yeah, I'll mute myself again, Andy. The next slide.
Yeah, great. So what the home analytics data set, so the combination of all those different sources of data will do is allow the provision of some information about energy efficiency, and you'll see the list of types of things that we can look at there. As I say, it is also suitable for those of you starting to look at, for example, renewable heat incentive potential installations. We can look at things like identifying whether properties are on or off gas grid and distance to the gas meter. If you're looking at other renewables, then we can look at roof orientation for solar potential, and then some information about household demographics in the bottom right there, and property attributes. And you'll note within the household demographics box there, we have got some information about likelihood of eco-eligibility, and that's for each of those different elements of the overall eco pot. So you would know whether a household might be eligible for the home heating cost reduction obligation, or, for example, whether they're in one of those identified Cisco areas. Next slide, please. So strengths are that it provides address level data on, you'll note the sort of nearly in the box there, address referencing. Those of you that have done that can be a bit of an imprecise art, but effectively information about every home. It can be used for targeting, so it's not just a historical record of what's already happened, but it can provide some information about suitability for measures that can still be installed. So it provides an estimate of remaining potential for insulation and other measures across a whole area. it can be slightly inaccurate and skewed, in particular in certain parts of the country, etc. But if you come to sort of contracting with us to purchase this data set, then we can talk you through some of that. It's intended to be accurate at the individual address level rather than in aggregate. So one of the things you might want to think about is the level at which you might want to aggregate up. As we say, it's not a definitive prediction, but on our website there's some information about statistical sampling and broadly how accurate we think the model data is for individual fields at address level. As Stuart's rightly said, it doesn't replace the need to do a survey, but it can provide a neat link on to other products and services, including IRT's tools. And if you do thoroughly understand your housing stock already, then it might not be so relevant, but we like to think that it might still be able to tell you something in addition that you don't know already. Next slide, please.
Is on your screen. Okay, you should be looking at a nice example of City Council.
Oh, I'm not. Oh, yeah, there we go. So, to give you a feel for what the data looks like, and I'll move through the next few slides fairly rapidly, just so Stuart's on his toes. So this is an example for Exeter City Council, and we've gone in and analysed wall types to assist them in planning eco. So if you can't make out the legend there on the slide, we can look at already insulated cavities versus uninsulated cavities and start to identify properties where we think there are solid walls. And you could start to bundle up information about the number of properties with each of those different wall types to start to identify at aggregate kind of ward level and so on how things are moving. Very good. In terms of targeting for the zero, so the first of those three batches of eco funding, then this map shows from Gwent some information again about wall construction, but importantly then on the right hand side we can start to identify particular types of properties. So that shows social housing with solid walls, so we can do cutouts within the data set. Then for eco funding eligibility, we can combine property data with demographic data. So this is some information from Devon, Plymouth and Torbay about homes eligible for the third eco funding pot, H-Crow, with uninsulated cavities, and that's those uninsulated cavities as a percentage of the total eligible properties. So we can start to go in and map and slice and dice this data in various ways to look at. That's a quick run through of the three different elements of eco. So it's not just an overall assessment, we can be quite specific within that.
If I can add a little anecdote at this point, Andy, yeah. I met a chap who did door knocking campaigns to try and identify opportunities, and as part of HHCRO, you have to take a photograph of the benefits that the person who lives in the house receives, and they're actually finding people are moving in for a month or two, getting their benefits with that address on it, so that the person can get funding and then moving out again. There's a little subculture of transient people just living temporarily in people's houses. Anyway,
yeah.
Click your next slide, sorry.
No, that's fine. And as you identified earlier, there is quite a bit of checking that Ofgem and others are doing, in particular around some of the eco-eligibility. Just to keep moving on, so those previous three slides showed the different sort of products as they relate to the three main different parts of eco. Under the first of those, the carbon emission reductions obligation, there's been quite a search for off-gas, hard-to-fill cavity properties because they score particularly highly for the suppliers and providers in terms of the number of points and their sort of value in terms of their submissions to Ofgem when they submit the schemes, and it is possible to go in and start to identify combinations of those two different factors. So what you've got there on the left-hand side for off-gas grid properties, then we can estimate how we think those properties are being heated currently, which is what that little bar chart at the bottom is showing you. Over on the right-hand side, for hard to treat cavities, it's not just the one type, so narrow cavities that Stuart referred to earlier. There are other kind of subtypes of hard to treat, and that bar chart at the bottom there just showing you those different sort of typologies and an estimate of the split of those by the most relevant local authorities in, I think this is Notts and Derby. Keep moving on, please, Stuart. And then we can go in and within an individual area. So this is some work we've completed recently for North West Leicestershire District Council. You can go in and look at the pie chart, shows the total numbers of eligible homes and a split between wall types, so in this case for hard to treat cavities, but then you can start to aggregate up, and the box at the bottom there just gives you some information about the cost of recommended packages, combinations of different types of improvement measures, indicative funding levels under the carbon emissions reduction obligation, and then the average fuel bill saving if those packages are installed on the properties. And then just one or two more. Next slide, please, Stuart. So we can look at estimated SAP ratings before and after the improvements. So if, and I guess particularly relevant for some of the RSLs, you have targets that you've kept after the end of some of the previous government schemes that were focused particularly around SAP improvement. But if you're still interested in that, then you can look at before and after and apply different packages of improvement measures and model their impact on improving SAP rating. The chart in the bottom left just shows year one bill savings, the overall bill saving across the lifetime of the installed measures, and then the third bar on the right just shows the total cost of the package of measures installed within that one local authority area. And then just to conclude, there's my email address if you're interested in some more information, and apologies for the rather long internet URL, but if you come onto the energysavingtrust.org.uk website, click on the tab to get you to information for organisations rather than individuals. There is a government and local programmes tab within that, and the information about home analytics, the sample data, the statistical testing, and some further information, and there's a little video clip in there showing you the GIS system kind of live in action, are all there and available for you to inspect at your leisure. So thanks very much, and I hope that shows how some of our products can work together with IRTs, and definitely encourage those of you with an incomplete picture of your housing stock to start thinking about that as the first step on a journey to engaging with eco. Back to you, Stuart.
Andrew, thank you very much for that. That was a real really good presentation. I hope it opened some people's eyes to what's actually out there, what's available from both EST and IRT. I'm sure we could mash them together and get an acronym that's better than EST and IRT, Andy. But the whole point is let's try and unlock it. If you do go down the road of, look, where should I start? What should I do? My advice would be, if you started with the EST database and then you said let's do infrared surveys on a percentage of where EST have identified potential problems, let's go and do that with infrared, and then let's engage with an installation company early on, or a utility company early on in the process. and make sure we don't miss any opportunities. And let's try and leverage these eco and green deals and get some people out of fuel poverty and get some people out there drilling holes in houses and fitting some insulation. The methodology at the end there is just our closing slide to say, hey, we can help you do this and focus on big wins quickly. To give you an idea of the speed that we survey, out of our 9 offices, we have about, I think, about 14 or 15 cameras out in the field. Each of those cameras can do between 300 and 500 houses an evening. And you're looking at less than £15 a house to do that. It's not hugely expensive. It's very, very quick. Our surveys happen at night time, so there's no disruption to the tenant. Someone asked a question earlier on about how do we deal with empty houses. That is a bit tricky. Infrared relies on a heat differential between inside and outside. So we need to either accept that maybe 10% of the housing stock will be void, or the people will be out, or they will just be not have the heating on. Our software can compensate for things like one house is at 18 degrees, one's at 19, one's at 20, one's at 21, one's at 23. We can accommodate that very, very easily. That's all automated. We've done things like we did a Smart Award for Innovation in Scotland with the Scottish Building Standards Agency to actually ascertain the validity of our software. Does it work on a timber framed house in Aviemore in Scotland in November? And does it work in July? And we know the reasons why it doesn't work in July. It's because it's too bloody hot and the heating's off. But now is the time to do it. The heating's on, it's cold. We've got about a 6-month window of nice, perfect weather. We have done about 250,000 houses to date. So this isn't something you're risking your stock with here. We had a couple of questions earlier on about will Ofgem accept our data. The short answer is yes and no. Yes, in that we use exactly the same criteria. We use SAP and SBEM as engines within our software, but you will still need to do a proper EPC, because what we're doing is we're making an assumption based on that person being in that house with a Vokira Linea Max boiler. If you've actually changed it to a Potterton combi boiler, we won't know that unless someone tells us. And we can't get access to things like that person's with Scottish and Southern Energy and they're paying 14p a kilowatt, or have they just changed to British Gas and they're paying 15p a kilowatt. We don't have access to that. So we have to make assumptions based on national averages. Obviously, when we're doing our software, our calculations, we're saying things like, this is a solid wall house in Oxford. We pick up what a solid wall house in Oxford of, say, 1970, if you happen to know the age of the property, which EST will, then we can be pretty damn accurate with the advice we're giving you based on those criteria, because we know what the minimum building standards and regulations were for Oxford. We know what the weather was like in Oxford for the last 20, 30 years. So it's relatively simple to incorporate those things into our dashboard and into our calculations. But it's like any other piece of software. It's garbage in, garbage out. Get the best stuff in quickly. But that is the end. Please keep your questions coming, fast and furious. We will answer them today, tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday. I have to end the presentation. I've got a furious wife who didn't realise I was cutting her holiday short so I could do this today. So I have to go and do family things now. But thank you very much for attending. Andy, thanks very much for your contribution. I really appreciate it.
No problem, thanks. No, thank you very much for inviting us to be part of it. Very good.
You're welcome. Thanks very much, audience. We had about 90 people on the line there, and certificates will be on their way shortly. Thanks very much, folks. All the best.